The death of the false self. A funeral for who you thought you had to be. There comes a moment in the soul's journey that feels like annihilation, not because something terrible has happened, but because the scaffolding of your identity, the one you spent your entire life building, begins to collapse. What you thought was you begins to disintegrate, and the grief is almost unbearable. You're not just losing ideas or behaviors, you're losing someone. Someone you carried, protected, adorned, and performed for. Someone you once believed was you. This is the death of the false self. And though no one around you may notice this silent funeral, it is one of the most sacred and agonizing rites of passage a soul can undergo. Part 1. The False Self, a masterpiece of survival. The false self is not your enemy. It was your protector. It was built slowly, layer by layer, over years of absorbing expectations, social roles, family conditioning, trauma responses, and the silent agreements of how to be in the world. It learned how to stay safe, how to be liked, how to achieve, how to belong. It became what others needed, what your culture celebrated, what your younger self believed was love. It was clever, adaptable, convincing. It knew how to play the part. It may have succeeded, it may have even looked radiant from the outside. But inside, something was quietly dying. Because no matter how refined the false self becomes, it is still a mask. It doesn't breathe real air. It doesn't speak from soul. It doesn't know how to rest. It doesn't know how to love or be loved, not truly. The false self survives, but it doesn't live. And one day, the mask gets too heavy. One day, something cracks. And the unraveling begins. Part 2. The Collapse. At first, it feels like depression, confusion, spiritual failure, a kind of cosmic fatigue. What used to motivate you now feels meaningless. What used to define you begins to feel like a lie. You question your career, your relationships, your appearance, your goals. You begin to realize that so much of what you built wasn't born from truth, but from fear. The ambitions that once gave you purpose now feel hollow. The image you projected now feels like armor. The relationships that once validated you now feel constricting. The life you designed now feels like a costume. You may want to run, escape, rebuild the mask, force joy. But a deeper part of you knows. You're not being punished. You're being emptied. Not for cruelty, for clarity. What's falling away is not you. What's dying is everything that is. Part 3. The Grief of Shedding. Nobody talks about how much it hurts. To lose yourself, not because of tragedy, but because truth has arrived. You may grieve the version of you that worked so hard to be perfect, the part that never asked for help, the part that people admired, the one who was always fine, the fixer, the performer, the strong one, the one who knew how to keep it all together. You may grieve who you were before you knew better, before you saw through the illusion, before you became too awake to go back. And you will feel alone, because transformation is intimate, it is cellular, it happens in dark, tender places that no one else can enter. This is the cocoon. Not a metaphor, a reality. Inside it, everything you thought was solid becomes fluid. Identity melts, ego dissolves, time warps. You are neither here nor there, no longer who you were, not yet who you're becoming. And still, something within you whispers, keep going. Part 4. The Space Between Death and Rebirth. In the space between identities, there is no map. You will be tempted to rebuild, to construct a new mask, this time spiritual or authentic or healed. But the soul doesn't want a new performance, the soul wants presence. You are not meant to become a better version of the false self. You are meant to remember the one beneath it all. The one who was never lost, only covered. The silence you now sit in is not emptiness, it is sacred ground. The confusion is not a flaw, it is fertile. The not knowing is not failure, it is freedom. But it feels like death because it is. You are dying to everything you thought you had to be. Part 5. Who emerges from the ashes? The true self is not flashy. It doesn't care for applause or approval. It doesn't seek control. It doesn't cling. It doesn't perform healing or enlightenment or strength. The true self just is. It breathes with the trees. It listens before it speaks. It doesn't need to be understood to feel whole. It laughs more, it tries less, it rests without guilt, it loves without barter. And when it speaks, the words carry weight, not because they're clever, but because they're real. This self was never born and never dies. It was simply buried beneath strategies, personas, defenses, and dreams that weren't yours to begin with. You don't find this self, you become empty enough for it to reveal itself. Part 6. No one celebrates this enough. We celebrate reinvention, we love glow-ups, we praise success stories. But what about soul deaths? What about the quiet breakdowns that no one sees? What about the months you spent weeping for no logical reason? What about the friendships that ended not in anger, but in silence? What about the mornings you stared at the wall and knew, deep in your bones, that you could never go back? There is no parade for this. But you deserve one. Because this is the most courageous work a soul can do. To die to illusion. To shed an identity that once kept you safe. To face the void and say, I trust what I cannot see. This is real transformation. Not marketed, not manicured, not loud. Just honest. Part 7. You will not be empty forever. There will come a time, not suddenly but gently, when the fog lifts. Not because you've figured it out, but because you've stopped needing to. You'll feel your breath again, you'll laugh differently, you'll meet people and no longer need to perform, you'll create without proving, you'll rest without apology, you'll feel, for the first time in a long time, home inside yourself. You won't go back to who you were, you can't, the false self doesn't resurrect. But you will move forward as something softer, quieter, wiser. More you than you've ever been. Final words. The death of the false self is not glamorous. It is raw, disorienting, intimate. But it is sacred. It is the tearing down of illusion, the collapse of performance, the unraveling of everything you thought would make you lovable. So if you are in this death, trust it. If everything is falling apart, let it. If nothing makes sense, pause, don't rush, stay near yourself. There is life after this. Not the life you imagined, something deeper. And you, the one who emerges from the ashes, will not be better. You will be real. And that, in this world of masks, is the rarest thing.